a country compelled to surrender its heartlands, stripped of its defenses, and left exposed to a looming threat just a few hundred miles away. A nation that, regardless of its choices, cannot guarantee its own survival without risking the destruction of its neighbor. This is not a distant nightmare. It is a razor's edge on which Ukraine now stands. Every compromise, every concession feels like drafting the blueprint for the next war before the current one has even ended. And the question haunting everyone is as simple as it is terrifying. Can Ukraine survive without becoming a permanent target?
So no matter what version of an independent Ukraine there are parts of Ukraine that are less than 300 miles from Moscow, and there are no real geographic barriers in between. So you can have an independent, secure Ukraine or an independent, secure Russia, but you can't have both. And so Russia's position is, as long as Ukraine exists in any form, it is a threat to the very existence of the Russian Federation, and the Ukrainians feel pretty much the converse. So, the plan. Let's start with what has been making the rounds more, the Ukrainian view of things, and why the Ukrainians think the plan is unworkable. It forces them to never apply for NATO membership and enshrine that refusal into their constitution. It forces them to cut the size of their army by half and restrict the type of weapons that they can develop. And it forces them to permanently give up 3 provinces, the Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk. Luhansk and Donetsk are the core of the Ukrainian industrial zone, and right now the line of control goes roughly right down the middle of it. So this would take 2 territories that the Russians haven't even conquered completely, give them completely to the Russians, and then freeze the conflict along the line of control everywhere else and make a demilitarized belt in between. On the west side, the Ukrainian side of that line of control, there's no geographic barriers whatsoever, and so it'd be very easy in the future for the Russians simply to mass troops and march on Kiev. It would not be a difficult war, especially if Ukraine was denuded of weapons. So from the Ukrainian point of view, this feels like a guarantee of a follow-on war that they have no hope of winning.
Let's consider the perspective of one of the world's leading geopolitical analysts on why this fragile balance may be fundamentally unsustainable. Jean's analysis cuts through diplomatic language to expose a stark reality. Geography and proximity grant Russia a relentless strategic advantage. Ukraine's forced compromises risk turning its future into a permanent battlefield, while any attempt to impose peace leaves Kiev exposed, with vulnerable territories acting as ticking time bombs. In short, today's proposals may secure signatures on paper, but they cannot deliver genuine safety. As we peel back the layers of this geopolitical struggle, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The war is no longer confined to borders or front lines. It has begun to strike where it hurts most, at the very core of what Russia once claimed as secured. Crimea, long portrayed as Moscow's unshakable jewel on the Black Sea, is now sliding into chaos. The illusion of invincibility, of stability and control, is collapsing in real time. At the center of this unraveling lies a crisis deeper than any single battlefield setback. It has exposed not only the vulnerability of Russian logistics, but the fragility of Putin's entire claim over the peninsula. Crimea is choking. An unprecedented fuel crisis has erupted across the region, leaving millions scrambling for a resource that once sustained daily life and is now scarce and precious. Gas stations are overwhelmed by lines stretching for miles, cars idling endlessly as residents clutch coupons and fuel cards. Black market dealers exploit the panic, charging exorbitant prices for unreliable fuel. From Simferopol to Yalta, the machinery of everyday life is grinding to a halt, not for lack of effort, but for lack of gasoline and diesel. Fuel has become more than a necessity. It has become a symbol of survival in a place where survival itself feels uncertain. This is not the result of bad weather or a temporary disruption. It is a collapse of Russia's logistics network laid bare. The Kremlin's narrative of stability is unraveling. The supposed calm of October was little more than a mirage, a propaganda effort masking a crisis already set in motion. In eastern Crimea, particularly the Lenensky district, major stations report that both AI-95 gasoline and diesel are completely depleted. In Simferopol, high-octane fuel has vanished from public sale altogether, forcing residents to rely on rationed coupons and special cards. Local chat groups, once casual community forums, have transformed into frantic information hubs as drivers desperately search for any available supply. Traffic congestion has worsened as panic spreads, but the consequences extend far beyond gas stations. With road transport as the backbone of Crimea's economy, Fuel shortages threaten public transit, food distribution, and emergency services. Prices have surged to nearly 90 rubles per liter, accelerating inflation and placing additional strain on Russia's already fragile economy. Civil unrest has followed predictably. Gasoline theft, robberies in queues, and violent confrontations are becoming more common. Classic symptoms of scarcity-driven panic and the erosion of trust and authority. The black market flourishes in this environment, offering overpriced and often low-quality fuel. Russian observers report engines malfunctioning, warning lights flashing, and vehicles breaking down with increasing frequency. Ukrainian resistance channels claim that faulty fuel batches have been deliberately circulated, further compounding the crisis. Every stalled engine mirrors the larger collapse taking place across the peninsula. This crisis did not emerge in isolation. It is a direct result of Ukraine's systematic campaign against Russia's Black Sea supply network. Ukrainian forces have targeted oil infrastructure relentlessly, on land and at sea, including the so-called shadow fleet used to bypass sanctions. Exports of oil products dropped by more than 30% in a single month following precision drone strikes. Black Sea ports suspended fuel exports and crude processing after coordinated attacks, while damage to critical infrastructure, such as the Kerch crossing, halted deliveries from mainland Russia. Ukrainian asymmetric operations have proven both precise and devastating. The Feodosia fuel terminal, a critical storage hub, was destroyed in October 2025, with open-source intelligence confirming the loss of vast fuel reserves. The consequences are profound. By early August 2025, Ukrainian strikes had disabled roughly 21% of Russia's oil refining capacity in the Black Sea region, temporarily removing 1.4 million barrels per day from operation. At least 58 energy facilities were hit, crippling both military logistics and civilian supply chains. According to the International Energy Agency, Russia's oil revenues fell to their lowest monthly level since the invasion began, with November revenues down $3.6 billion year-over-year. Moscow now faces an estimated $50 billion shortfall, raising the likelihood of higher taxes on a population already under economic strain. Ukraine has also extended its campaign to maritime targets, striking sanction-evading tankers near the Black Sea coast and forcing shipping companies to reconsider port calls. Moscow's assurances of maritime security are increasingly hollow. For Crimea's residents, this is not abstract geopolitics. It is daily life unraveling. Long lines, empty pumps, damaged vehicles, theft, and fear have become routine. The unspoken social contract, obedience in exchange for stability, has collapsed. Military priorities have eclipsed civilian needs, reducing residents to second-class citizens in their own homes. The psychological toll is severe. Panic and misinformation flood telegram channels. Evacuation demands grow louder, and public confidence in the state has eroded. Every destroyed fuel tank and halted shipment chips away at Putin's portrayal of Crimea as an impregnable fortress. The peninsula's logistical backbone now hangs by a thread. Civilian chaos mirrors military stalemate. Russia may claim control, but in reality it is a power under siege, a regime whose promises of security have been exposed as hollow. The fuel crisis in Crimea is more than a shortage. It is a symbol of unraveling authority, proof that Ukraine's asymmetric strategy works, and a warning with global implications. Every black market sale, every stranded driver, every destroyed tanker underscores a simple truth. Russia's hold over Crimea is neither absolute nor permanent. Once hailed as Moscow's crown jewel on the Black Sea, the peninsula now stands exposed, vulnerable, and unstable. For the Kremlin, the message is unmistakable. The war has come home. The illusion of invincibility is over. The lines at gas stations are no longer just queues for fuel. They are the long, dark shadow of a regime facing a crisis of legitimacy. Infrastructure has become a weapon, logistics a battlefield, and civilian panic a strategic blow. The blockade of Crimea reveals a collapse not only of supply lines, but of the narrative itself. The fortress exists only on paper. And as the chaos spreads, the world watches Crimea teeter on the edge, an enduring testament to the power of asymmetric warfare and fragility of even the most tightly controlled regimes.